The In It Together with Lori Lynn Green talk show is a positive way to start your day. Ready for some encouragement?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm pumped. Let's let the healing begin.
Come be inspired, hear moving stories, even laugh out loud.
Can't make heads or tail of what I'm saying.
Just incomprehensible.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
You'll hear real people doing real things to make a real impact.
You are heroes every day.
Hear honest, compassionate, engaging issues you care about.
You see people come together to do good in our community, and the more we come together, the more good we can do.
Listen in and get started on redesigning your life and hear what's positive in Greater Manchester. Here's your happy host, Lori Lynn Green.
Good morning, friends in Greater Manchester. Welcome to In It Together. We are so glad that you've tuned in. If you'd like to find us on the web, you can go to inittogether.net, listen live or to previous shows, even link to our Facebook, our Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And if you like and follow us, you'll see we're bringing out the best in people to influence positive change in this community and beyond. Today is a special community program with Rick Kardos from the Nathan Project, and we'll be talking about the convergence of pornography and human trafficking this morning. A very delicate situation, a very delicate topic, but an important one to have in light of recent news with Robert Kraft down in Florida, and we're excited to share this morning. Please share this post. People need to hear this. So we'll be back right after this brief message. Stay tuned.
Mark Major knows that great coaches need constant training to be effective. As a certified coach, teacher, and speaker with the John Maxwell team, Mark can help you identify and activate your personal and professional goals. If you seek to do more and be more, look up Mark on the web at johnmaxwellgroup.com/MARC-major or call 603-674-6818. Mark Major, growing leaders and adding value.
Hi, I'm Jen Lever, anchor of the Recovery Now segments. Join me Tuesdays at 9 a.m. where I offer support to families struggling with addiction. Hear personal stories, learn the signs of addiction, and get help for your loved ones. Only on In It Together with Lori Lynn Green.
Hi, I'm Lori Lynn Green, advancement strategist and owner of alphaadvancementstrategies.com. I've been very successful at helping people overcome stressful situations to get immediate results in their personal and professional lives. At Alpha Advancement Strategies, we provide a non-judgmental and supportive environment, empowering clients to focus more on reaching their goals. You can find us on the web at alphaadvancementstrategies.com or call us at 603-860-9260. Alpha Advancement Strategies is where you invest in yourself.
Morgan Self-Storage has been serving Manchester and Salem, New Hampshire for over 15 years. Facilities are heated with security and video surveillance in well-lit hallways, easy access loading, and high-capacity elevators. With many-sized units, portable trailers, and boxes for moving, we can meet your residential or business storage needs. 400 Bedford Street in Manchester or 8 Willow Street in Salem. Visit morganstorage.com or call us at 603-623-2000. Morgan Self-Storage, making self-storage secure, safe, and easy.
Hi, I'm Bob Bola, Chief Instructor of Defensive Strategies and anchor of the Personal Safety segment, where we talk about personal protection, situational awareness, and home defense. Tune in every Thursday at 9 a.m. and refuse to be a victim. Only on In It Together with Lori Lynn Green.
Welcome back to In It Together. Kicking off this morning's show, special community show, Come Together. And we have Rick Kardos here from the Nathan Project. Good morning, Rick.
Morning.
It's great to hear you. Great to be with you this morning. I've been blessed to get to know you over the last couple of months since you've been sharing our space here. We love you having you here. But one of the things that has really impressed me is, the call in your life. It's not one that is for the weak at heart, not one that most people would want to take on, similar to some of the other big issues we see out there. We have our addiction segments on Tuesdays typically, and this kind of falls in line with that, but but it's also very community oriented. And so tell me a little bit about the background of how you got involved with the Nathan Project and how you launched it.
Sure. I mean, my story is somewhat of a common one in that I was exposed to pornography at a young age, 12, 13 years old. From there, it morphed into what we would say today as an addiction. I didn't know that then. I just thought it was an issue or problem. Carried that into my teen years and then again into a marriage when I was 27 years old. And in the marriage, you would call me or describe me as a philandering fool. I then was with other women and, in a sense, abused that opportunity to be with a wonderful woman.
Right.
Came to Christ, to know Jesus Christ, Lord and Savior, in 1989.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal change in my life. And did cost me a marriage, that relationship I had with porn, that addiction. Eventually, 1996, 97, remarried a wonderful woman, Vicki, that my wife today, and together with, I won't call it her guidance, but with the influence she had in my life and that of other pastors and teachers, I began that road to recovery and finally gave it up, Finally had that discussion with the Lord where I said, I give up. I don't know what more I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And been sober and, walking a road to health since 1999.
So often we see this as we talk about addictions. A lot of people don't see this as addiction. We've seen guys high-five each other and joke around about this type of thing. And what's the big deal? And we see a lot of that going on. But similar to addictions, there's got a lot of stigmas that are stuck to it. And we try to break those stigmas here. Nobody wakes up one day and says, I want to be addicted to pornography or a substance or anything like that. So just to make it real, there's a lot of statistics I was reading on your paperwork here. I don't know if you know them by heart or not, but I was shocked to find out that there was a study released by Covenant Eyes in 2018 that said 50% of teenagers seek out pornography at least monthly.
Mm-hmm.
And so with technology today and accessibility and even the education system turning to technology more and more, and we know that a few years back they tried to put like blockers and different things on, but I just think there's so much access even in spite of those. What would you say as far as this 7% rating? Do you think that's low today? This was a year ago. I mean, do you think it's still?
In some ways, the numbers don't matter when I look at them. In that,
yeah, you're right. Just like abortion, one matters.
Sure.
Yeah.
When a 10-year-old boy walks through the mall in New Hampshire and looks at the pictures outside of Macy's or Victoria's Secret wearing of women wearing very little. These are 12, 14-foot high pictures.
Right.
If I saw those same pictures in 1968 when I first was exposed to porn and took them to school and shared them with my friends, the same way young men take their phone to school today and share XXX rated videos, if I did that in 8th grade and was caught, I would have been expelled from school. And why? Because I brought pornography in. Pornography hasn't changed. The definition hasn't changed.
Yeah.
But the culture and this culture-warring society we have has changed. Their definition has changed, but the definition of pornography hasn't.
Yeah. We've seen so much immorality being normalized and even like, murder. It doesn't matter, personal attacks, people are getting more violent, a lot of that. And we've discussed this on almost every segment during the week, that there's a breakdown in society as a whole. We've taken God out of schools, but we want to share the Bible when they're in prison. And so we wonder why, things are so backwards. As you were talking about the stores, just taking people down, giving them a picture of a normal day, just going to the mall with your kids, even stores like Abercrombie and Fitch, they always had very sexually targeted kind of marketing, right in the windows. A lot of parents complained. There were even groups talking about it. I think now that they have like a cover, they cover things up a little bit more. But we've become somewhat desensitized. Would that be a fair assumption?
And desensitized is probably the best description.
Yeah.
But I also think we've been sold as a culture a lie. The idea that sex sells.
Yeah.
We believe, we understand, we agree with it, but the idea that, for example, prostitution doesn't hurt anybody but me. There's no victim here. It's just me buying sexual favors or sexual behaviors to satisfy my own self. It couldn't be farther from the truth, but we bought into those lies so that we can do what we want without consequence.
Yeah, that is the greatest deceit. I mean, anyone can, somebody who maybe has an addiction to substance or whatever, we know it doesn't just affect the person doing it. It affects their family. It affects the people around them. And
sure.
You've lived through this. Thank God for the healing of regrets and self-condemnation and not, being able to do the right thing at a certain time in your life. But, fortunately, there's been a great healing in your life. And I just applaud you for reaching out to other men and your wife, Vicki, to other women who have been married to or have ex-spouses of this and may have children. And a lot of people don't understand that. Similar to families that go through addiction, people just don't understand what they go through.
Well, I mean, I think when you say families similar to families that go through addiction, it is an addiction.
Right. That's what I want to show people. It's not really different in that sense where it affects them.
Well, I mean, an example, and using example in a church, or in our Christian culture, if you decide to use a substance that is foreign to your body, is not naturally brought in, and you use it to the point where it violates your belief system. It violates your promises to your family. It violates
your values. Right?
In total.
Yeah.
And yet you continue to use it. No matter what it's going to cost you, you continue to use it. If we described that situation and we didn't say it was pornography, whatever the substance was, we would say, oh, you're addicted. You must be addicted to that substance. Well, when the substance is porn, then we're talking about sexual addiction. And we talk about 50 or 55 or 60% of the adult men in a congregation who are using at least once per month or are looking for at least once per month and then viewing it. Is the potential exists that 50% of the men are addicted. They're not just using, they're addicts in our church, and that's a scary number.
Yeah, and when we think about addiction, it always has something to do with something that has such a pull on you that you feel like you're desperate and you have to have it. Or you don't. Because it fills that void that we know that only God can fill, right?
Sure.
And that's, we're all, and Jen and I talk about this on Tuesdays in Recovery Now, is addiction is similar to, we're all created with this kind of void that only God can fill. He's the only one that has the true love, the true healing, the true, affirmation, acceptance. And he is, he can be your community too. And people need that. They need love, connection. They need community. And when they feel like they're not getting that, they're going to look for that in all the wrong places. We always say looking for love in all the wrong places. And I think this would be no different than that.
I think you and I talked yesterday briefly, off air, about the medication that pornography provides. When the stimulus hits your brain and your brain produces, dopamine, that feel-good drug, it medicates. And in men, most often it's medicating a father wound. The number one reason that we find men going from a casual look or seeing something as a young man to that stage of addiction is there's a father wound, there's a pain, something involved in their life, trauma from the past. And I have a saying that I use: when the pain of the past is part of the present, you will act out. You will use pornography in the future to medicate that pain, and then you don't want to let it go. But as you said, the greatest medication of that pain is that healing power of Christ. When He, in my life, when I experienced that, and then I experienced the beginning of health. Not just sobriety, not just recovery, but getting healthy physically, emotionally, spiritually healthy. The change became my new natural,
Right.
And to the point where we talked about this in 2005, I had an opportunity to leave just a wonderful, successful business career to join a ministry, called the National Coalition for the Protection of Children and Families. Boy, you can't imagine how many times I said that and couldn't get it off my tongue. But which eventually became Pure Hope, and worked as their executive director. You asked me how I got here. That's really the second half. And then since 2011, we've been a standalone ministry called the Nathan Project.
Right.
It's good. We're enjoying.
There's always steps, right, in our life. One thing leads to another, and that's true in the good sense, but it's also true in the bad sense. And this is why we're talking about that. Had you made a different choice, had you not surrendered your life to Christ and allowed Him to work in you, where where He says in our weakness He makes us strong, and acknowledging your need of Him and allowing Him to be the Lord of your life. That makes the whole difference between you going down another path and you being where you are now, being an advocate for those who struggle with it, and not another person that is going to condemn them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the comments that I've made, and I'm sure others have too, is somebody will say, well, have you ever seen God perform a miracle? And I'm like, yeah, in fact, I see one every day. And they said, well, what do you mean? How can you see a miracle every day? Well, I get up in the morning and I look in the mirror, and I see a man redeemed by God's great grace, who now is allowed to take all of the horribleness of life and in some way, shape, or form apply it to a ministry helping other men, other families, other children. That's a miracle.
It is. And anybody who has come to know that can totally relate to everything you just said. And I don't want to gloss over this part. Everything Rick just said is so, so important, where, you wake up just like I do. Today's a gift. What am I going to do with it? Right? What am I going to do with today? We're not promised tomorrow. We have today. God said He gives us grace for today. And, to me, it's like, if today was my last day, what would I do with that? I'm not gonna just waste it. I'm not gonna, I want to make it count. And I think that's what I've come to know you as your heart. We all have struggles in life, but we press on toward the high calling, right?
I mean, I've told people I have the greatest job in the world. Every day, every week, every month, I hear the stories firsthand of men and of wives and of families that are together. They're prospering. Even at times I hear from, or I've experienced the story of a wife whose marriage didn't make it, because of this, the damage that was done. But she now stands alone on her own 2 feet, healthy and growing in Christ. So the victory, imagine having that happen to you on a weekly basis. It's just awesome. The feelings of grace and of joy that it gives me, they make every day a new day and an easy day. I look up looking forward to doing what I do.
Yeah, and this isn't limited to just men. There are women who also get caught up in this too, probably more so now than before. It was probably more men than it is now, but with technology and everything, you don't know. I have a good friend who was married to someone who got caught up in that and ended up, through divorce and all that. And it was extremely painful. She went from, living in a nice home to being almost on welfare with a young child. And that was a very difficult time of her life. So when we talk about, your ministry in the Nathan Project, you and your wife separately have things that you function in. I'd like to know what the difference of those is, because I know that your wife she has groups, and there would be a time of bringing women together that helps the family member through the healing. Like we said before,
Sure.
we always want to help the person who has the addiction and the problem get better, but we don't work with the families who now have to relearn how to heal.
Just a snapshot of what we do.
Okay.
For men-only groups, you mentioned, we have groups for men who struggle with pornography use, other kinds of sexual compulsive activity, to the point of addiction. And those groups are closed, confidential places where men feel safe, where they can talk, they can share, but where they also study. Where did this come from? Why am I doing this? How do I get healthy? What are the behavioral changes I need to make? They're involved in accountability. Those groups are very particularly for men in that struggle. My wife has groups called for women-only groups, and they are for the wives, the partners, the ex-spouses of men who are engaged in the use of pornography for the most part. And they need to understand what the problem is, what he's all about, but more importantly, where are they at? What do they do to keep themselves healthy? What kind of boundaries do they set?
Sure.
What kind of decisions do they make about their future and the future of their families when pornography is present in that family?
Well, one of the things from talking to my friend about some of the stuff that was very painful, that was hard, broke trust. There's a broken trust that goes on there. And similar to substance addiction, we see that there's a lot of lying that goes on, a lot of hiding, lying, deceit. And that's all part of it, right?
Sure. The shame's a huge part of this addiction.
Yeah.
And there's something we call the shame cycle, and if I can describe it very quickly, if you can imagine a person living in restoration. They've had the problem, they're doing well, they're sober, they're in recovery, and then boom, something hits, some kind of trauma. It can even be just a fantasy. Something runs through their head. Then that trigger creates, oh my goodness, I used to do this, I did that, and I feel ashamed about what I did. And that creates that pain, and that pain comes back, and the pain says, your brain says, I need to medicate that pain, and you go back, you fall into it. You don't really fall into it. You choose to do it again, and maybe 4, 5, 6, 8 days later, you feel a little better about yourself, restoration's there, and then it happens again. And you just you ride that shame cycle.
You can't say this is not an addiction. This is just like any substance addiction, there's these relapses, and the relapses come because of, like you said, how we think about ourselves. And if shame and condemnation come on us, it almost invites us in even more to do it.
When you say, like other addictions, say this right, not a correction, but
it's
something,
okay, but
something to think about is that it's much worse than the other addictions.
Okay.
I know there's Dr. Mary Layden out at the University of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
She had a comment saying that, porn, to escape the addiction of pornography is so much more difficult than cocaine. With cocaine, maybe you can get the substance out of your system 30, 60, 90 days. You can isolate from the use. You can break away from friends that do it. With pornography, the images are in there forever. I stand in front of groups of, 1,000 men or whatever, 2,000 men, and I say, how many men in this group can remember what they saw on the news last Friday night? What was the lead story last Friday night? And it could have been something really horrible. And most of them look at me and like, I don't know. Then I ask them, how many of you can remember that first image, the first time you saw a sexually explicit picture or magazine or video? And almost all the hands go up. The power of that image is still there. If I were sitting here with you and I wanted to let my mind race towards a fantasy, something that happened in the past, something I've seen, it's still there. Right. I don't choose to see it anymore. My brain takes a new pathway, a healthy one.
Right.
But does that make sense? That
it does make sense, and I like that you clarified, the image aspect of that and why it makes it worse, because that's really, God communicates with us so much through image and, by his Spirit, to our soul, and that then it's an outworking of that. But because we're designed that way, this is why it's so much more important to make sure that we are getting the images from him.
Well, we also talk about, I'm sure we've all said this, we've all heard it many times. An image or a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
If I met you and you expressed the need to know Jesus Christ because of the pain, that you wanted to have a Savior, and I said, great, pick up that Bible over there and read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Read Acts and Romans and one of Paul's letters to the city of Corinth, and you're really going to get this. Or I sat you down and I brought out the Jesus film, which showed you a video of the life of Christ, where he was born, what it was like to walk, his teachings. You saw video of him on the cross. You saw the images.
You saw the
of
miracles.
That death.
You saw,
And then you saw him rise again from the dead and come back and teach and then ascend into heaven. If you saw that, what would be the power? I shouldn't say what would be the power. Understand that or know that the power of that, those images, that video, is so much larger than reading the story. Now, you need to read the story. You need to understand. That's why he gave us his word. But those images are so powerful. Unfortunately, that same situation exists. Imagine a 12 or 13-year-old brain and a young man.
Yeah.
Those images, in effect, rape his brain. His brain's not prepared for that to happen. It's an aberrant behavior. I don't know if I've ever met a young man who, as an adult, didn't look at me and say, the first time I saw porn, I wanted to keep it a secret.
Right.
It was almost innate. It was almost his natural to want to keep that a secret. Why?
Right. No, that's a good point. We have to actually take a short break. I want to just say thank you for those who are listening today via internet radio and on live stream. We have people who support us, so we thank you for supporting those who support us. We'll be back right after this. We'll talk a little bit more about some things that you got coming up, and we'll be right back, so stay tuned.
Little Leapers and Knowledge Keepers Childcare and Preschool offers learning experiences that give kids a healthy sense of self and meaningful connections to the world around them. We teach children from a positive perspective so they learn healthy conflict resolution and develop character. Owner Jennifer Lever has over 28 years' experience in child development. She's helped children learn to read as young as 18 months. Join our happy place where we make happy happen, located in Pinardville, bordering Bedford and Manchester. Call today at 603-491-1780.
Hi, this is Lori Lynn Green, Advancement Strategist and Coach Trainer at alphaadvancementstrategies.com. Join me Mondays at 9 a.m. where I'll talk about ways to help keep you moving forward in life. Only on In It Together with Lori Lynn Green. Welcome back to In It Together, in the midst of our Come Together community segment with Rick Kardos from the Nathan Project. Very insightful conversation. We didn't really get to touch on a little bit about the recent story in the news with Robert Kraft. And so what we entitled today, talking about the convergence of pornography in human trafficking. And I think I'm going to actually be having somebody on next week to really talk more about the human trafficking aspect of this. So I feel like this is great timing of how this all comes together. But I want you to take it from the pornography side and how that is connected.
I thought about, when I thought about being on the show, how could we see this through the eyes of that 18 to 25-year-old, the culture that's being just morally taken apart by the use of pornography. And I grabbed it's called the Porn Phenomenon, a survey from George Barna, a very respected survey company or corporation. And they asked questions that went something like this. taking something that belongs to someone else is usually or morally wrong. And the answer from this group was 88% said yes, it was usually or always morally wrong. And then we walked down saying something that isn't true, lying, and 71% said that is usually or morally wrong. I don't know what the other 29% thought about lying, but obviously they disagreed. But then the one that I point to is 56% of those who heard the statement, recycling, not recycling is usually or morally wrong, agreed. Not recycling, 6 out of 10, it's wrong. You should be recycling. Then you keep scrolling down and you see viewing pornographic images is usually or always wrong, 32%. So almost half, about
people
half.
think it's harm. There are people who naively think it's harmless because they don't understand what it does.
And then what I thought about, in fact, this morning I thought, what if we changed that question and said that buying sex from a videographer that showed a woman being abused, beaten on, violence against her in any way, shape, and form, and brought to us for our pleasure, would it be usually or morally wrong to do that, to use that woman that way? I think the answer would move back up into that 88 percentile.
Yeah.
It'd rank right up there with stealing.
Yeah.
Because that's how we don't think of it that way. But that's what pornography is. Pornography is it's video, for example, as we talk about video in particular, of women who are either coerced or, as you'll talk about next week, trafficked. A very, very, probably the most common way that women end up in prostitution or making pornography or being the victim of a pornographer is they're trafficked into that position or into that circumstance. That's the part that society doesn't understand. It isn't just about you and what you enjoy. When we talk about Mr. Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, what happened down in Florida, I found myself listening to the radio, and all I heard was, oh, my goodness, what's this going to do to his image? He's 77 years old, and, how is this going to change the way we look at him? And even one of the key comments on sports radio talk shows was, what will this do to the image of the Patriots, to their brand? And never once did they mention or ask the question, what about 8 women who were being held probably against their will, trafficked into this country and abused, 8 to 10 to 15 times a day by men?
Yeah, this is powerful what you're saying, because we have come to the place where we place our value on the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
We do. We have no, the value of life. We see this in the abortion industry. This is the same thing, and these are areas that I'm passionate about. I value life, whether it's the unborn child or the abused woman or trafficked woman or child. Either way you look at it, there's a perpetrator in this story.
For sure. Well, there's a victim in this story.
And there's a victim in the story, right? Yeah.
And we tend to talk about the perpetrator and what happened to him or her, how it affects that person, not the victim. And we know, I think innately we know, if we describe that person as a victim, then the whole picture, for example, of prostitution changes. If we see her as a victim, then it's very difficult for us to say, well, it's just about me. It's just about what I want. It's not hurting anyone else. The same for pornography. If what we're seeing is all about me and, maybe the self-gratifying sex that I experience after I look at it, and not the fact that I'm watching a woman abused.
That's somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's wife.
Well, if you were a man looking at this and you looked at a video and the next video you looked at was your 18-year-old daughter, being abused knowing that, even though she's out of your house, you don't know where she's been trafficked into that particular.
We need to take what Rick is saying right now is when you think about that, you need to think about your sister and your daughter and your mother or whatever, and because that's somebody's sister and daughter.
Sure.
It's somebody's. And that's why we need to stand up for it as if it's our own. And so we only have like a couple minutes here, so just your last thoughts on how we handle this, and also you can promote this thing you have that coming up, or even the Nathan Project stuff. I'm going to let you.
Yeah,
just
let me
talk.
take 2 minutes to share with you that as a ministry, obviously we raise money to accommodate the work, to be able to continue to do the work. And one of the ways, we have a benefit and celebration coming up on March 15th. If you'd like to join us, you're more than welcome to go to nathanproject.net. You can call me personally. If it's all right, I'll share my phone number is 603-682-7800. It's, 682-7800. Or, my email, rick@nathanproject.net. Just let me know you'd like to come as our guest, register online. Great evening. Superb message by a gentleman from out in San Diego who now is responsible for the beginning of 30, 40, 50, 60 of these 4 men-only groups all around the San Diego area. And he's going to talk about the ripple effect. He and I met 15 years ago. Then he decided, we need to do this out here, what you're doing now.
Right.
We met, we talked about it. He went home, and there's a second piece. And who knows how many people out of those groups and those places up and down the West Coast. So we'll do that. Great food, all prepared on site, which is a big deal. It's Friday night. It's a date night. I won't speak so much, which is good for a lot of folks who might be listening.
You do a great job.
But there'll be a time of testimony and a time of honoring the people that have led this ministry. It's a good night. It's a blessing.
Yeah, it is. So are you all set? Everything?
Yeah, Friday, March 15th would be good to mention the date.
All right.
Is it possible to close with?
Sure. Please.
This was a statement out of that came after that survey.
Go ahead.
And it's not short, but this is what Rebecca Stone said. She was one of the creators. She said, however, culture-warring moral panic, the idea that we're going to go out there and try to scare people into stopping or slowing down this tsunami of filth, of porn that's coming across our society. She said, moral panic has done almost nothing to curb the use of porn or change people's perceptions of it. Stone concludes, we require a new model of social engagement, one marked by joy, grace, and hope. The porn phenomenon, the survey, is not a time for apocalyptic